That's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was kind of a whirlwind of a 24 hours, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And how was South by Southwest?
Oh, it was actually, so Moses had a great time out there. I didn't get to go because of the fact that we were preparing for the whole New York City thing. But like
Oh wait, there's a lot.
there's a lag.
I think we're good. I don't have it on my end.
No, no. Cool. But yeah, South by Southwest went pretty well for Moses. He spoke in front of Ernst and Young, and in relation to like like the metaverse and stuff like that, and how the metaverse can relate to educating people, and they were very happy to hear about something different than just technologies, but also technologies that can provide solutions. And so it was a refreshing breath for them. But it was overall a good panel that Moses did over at South by Southwest for sure.
Mm.
Awesome. Yeah, I wonder if there's a way to, it'd be great to see some of those. Sometimes I know that I don't know if they post them or they probably have them for only like if you attend. But it would be cool to hear more. All right, well, we're 2 minutes out, and we're live on YouTube.
Yeah, we're live and we're recording. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, thank you guys all for being here. I'm so grateful to have you guys here to have this discussion today. And I would really like it if first we just kind of go around and each of you introduce yourselves and what you're working on. That would be great. So let's start with Tina.
Great, thanks. I'm Tina Dornbush. So I work right now with Merit Controls as our Director of Product Management. So I work in the solar industry, and Merit works a little bit more broadly, kind of in renewable energy as a whole. So what we do is basically create software that works as kind of the brains of a utility scale power plant. So what that means is it's recording all the data, and then kind of taking in any commands from the grid operator and making sure that those happen. And that's basically allowing us to have an electrical system as we move away from fossil fuels and into more renewable inverter-based resources, which just is the type of resources that most renewables are. What that means is that it's kind of allowing us to maintain the reliability and just regularity that we expect of, you flip on the switch and the lights come on. So I'm working kind of helping us evaluate where are the requirements moving to make sure that we can keep that reliability as we move into a more heavily renewables grid. And part of that is helping with the deployment of energy storage. We need really high quality control systems to make sure that those energy storage systems do what we need them to do as we displace more fossil fuels and as we move towards more resources like wind and solar that aren't available when we want them to be available. And then also on the wind and the solar, making sure that they can provide the electrical responses that we need, because having a reliable grid isn't just about having the energy there. It gets a little bit technical, but basically we need to be able to make sure the frequency and the voltage are reliable as well, because otherwise essentially it can shut down systems, it can destroy equipment if we're not kind of keeping that all the way it needs to be. So what we do at Merit Controls is a software piece of how that all kind of comes together and supports a reliable grid. And as we move away from coal and natural gas, that's going to be more and more important. So that's what I do.
Awesome. Great. Let's go to Lance.
Hi, my name's Lance Beecher. I'm a assistant extension specialist at Clemson University with the cooperative extension program. And basically what I do is aquaponics work and hydroponics work. And so I work with students here, have an intern, and most of the time we're just developing systems For example, we just put together a system for the ability to demonstrate for disabled people to use aquaponics as a means of growing food, if you want to say. And so we put that system together, but mainly it's just looking at new ways to grow food and different technologies, just to, of course, have people or have food available for people that would otherwise not have it. So.
All right, let's move on to Apollo.
Hey there, hey there. So my name is Apollo Mondesir, and I'm the CEO of Rocksteady Consulting. We're a consultancy that primarily focuses on innovation and pushing things forward in a way that might not have been seen before, in relation to helping communities develop, and also helping with nonprofit organizations grow. One of which is the Moses West Foundation. And over these past few months, and about over a year now, we've helped him grow from, making these machines specifically for the military and hopefully making one or two for the community, to now, speaking at the United Nations, and also, doing things on an international level, like teaching people in Pakistan about how to develop units in relation to what he's made to provide people water resources. And from those things, hopefully we provide, an alleviation of food deserts and an alleviation to many of the problems that come around unsanitary situations that revolve around a lack of clean water. And that's kind of our focus, really.
Awesome, Apollo. Before we move on, can you explain exactly like what Moses West has invented?
Yeah. So the founder of the Moses West Foundation, his name is Moses West, and he's developed a machine that's called an atmospheric water generator. This machine produces a minimum of 211 gallons to, depending on the size and the scale, we have a facility size that does about 1.2 million gallons a day. And our goal is to have these units and facilities placed in several municipal locations around the country. So that way things that, happen with, like there's a contamination spill that's currently happening in Philadelphia. Things of those natures, we could be prepared and have a resource where it's like, hey, you guys don't have to rush a whole bunch of bottles of water out there. Now you can roll these machines out instead. And, over the past 10 years, he's been making them for the United States military to the tune that there's over 170 around the globe. But only 4 of them are in the United States as of right now, and it's mostly because of red tape. And so what we're doing is trying to make these things more commonplace in places where people will have them as a regular item, as an extension of their home, where people can get pure water. Quite literally, 365 days a week, you can have water on tap without an issue. And it's powered by renewable energy. It can be powered by grid power. And our goal is to start putting them in communities. And so people can develop these communities around this facet of water production.
So I'm sure maybe, hopefully, possibly, you guys are kind of piecing together why we've asked you all to be here. And for me, it's inspiring because each of you work in a field that is really on the cutting edge technology and bring about a really truly sustainable planet that we live on. So I'm inspired by the work that you guys do, and I wanted to, for the next round of question, just ask each of you, and you can chime in how you would like to, is what inspires you about the work that you're doing right now.
I'll go ahead and basically what inspires me is the fact that we have to feed people in this world, and we have a population that's growing tremendously. And so we have to find new technologies to grow food. And so what I do is try to use 2 of the more popular ones at this point, aquaponics and hydroponics, to grow food in a sustainable way. And then also too, looking at the environment, it's a more conservative way to grow food.
I'll go ahead next. I was always struck by the impact that water scarcity had on communities. And I realized how important it is, how important water is in every aspect of life. And one of the things that, you see every day on the news is how there's always a lack of it here, there's a lack of it there, but truly there's over 45% of the planet doesn't have access to clean water. And, some things that I learned at the United Nations is that there are families that send, mostly actually, they say women transport more water than any business, any machine, any form of equipment by hand across the globe. And so that being said, a lot of these places that they are picking this water up from isn't sanitary in the first place. And so now they're walking 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 miles just to bring someone, water that might be contaminated, but it's the best that they have. Situations like that are things that I know personally that, the team that I've assembled can do something about it. At least in some way, form, or fashion, we can do something about it. And so it's really about making that first step, a reality, I guess I would say. And that's kind of why I got into what I got into.
Yeah, and what inspires me is really just one of the big talking points in the fossil fuel industry that you'll hear about, why their industry is important is the quality of life that energy access brings to people in communities, educational opportunities, business opportunities, things like that. And I don't think it's wrong. I think it's really true. And to me, what excites me is being able to bring that quality of life in a sustainable way, in a way that doesn't bring about local environmental pollutants for those communities, and in a way that we can continue to generate rather than kind of running ourselves into the ground from a climate perspective. So I get really excited about that opportunity and the opportunity to kind of hopefully do that in conjunction with communities and in a way that benefits local communities.
It seems like a lot of y'all's inspirations are coming also from like the concerns that you guys see like in the world of what we're, the challenges that we face. I think that the one connection is that we need each and every one of y'all's, like we cannot survive without water, we can't survive without food, and we do need energy to really do the work that we do and live the life that we have become accustomed to. So y'all are really working in the building blocks of our society. One thing I wanted to do is kind of start making different connections. For example, Lance, if you could speak to how aquaponics ties to solar, and if you've built systems that use solar, do you have an example of that at all?
I don't personally have a system that runs off of solar, but there are a lot of people out there that are trying to develop systems that are off the grid, if you want to say. The one problem we have with that is the fact that we have fish involved with aquaponics. And so that unit has to run 24 hours a day. We have to have aeration for the fish, and we have to have water moving in the system. So it's not really the solar part of it that we're concerned about. We have that involved a lot. It's the battery part that we need to have at night to run the system. So which has come a long way since I've been doing it. And a lot of people have developed these systems where it's a sort of a one unit, all in one unit, where you have solar panels on the top, and the solar energy during the day is running the system, and then also backing or charging the batteries that are used at night. So it's a little bit different. That's probably the only problem we have with aquaponics. It's not a big deal with hydroponics, because really we can allow the system to shut down at night because the plants really aren't doing anything anyway. But we could use solar power a lot more efficiently in hydroponic systems. So it comes out to be a win-win for these systems. And then also too, to go with Apollo, the water scarcity and we always take advantage of the fact that we always turn on the faucet and there's clean water coming out of it, but sooner or later that's going to be an issue. And so I look at the aquaponics and hydroponic systems as a very clean system where it recirculates water. So as far as the amount of water we're using, we're probably using 90% less water than traditional agriculture. So that on that side of things, it works out well with the water part of it too.
Okay, awesome. Like that's what Tina, do you want to jump in on that part of the conversation? Because I know that's something that usually comes up with.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I'd add is, we don't have to be directly connected in order for aquaponics and solar systems to be working together, right? If solar's on the grid, it's partially powering a grid-powered aquaponics system. So I'm excited about kind of as we get more and more solar power on our grid, how that can impact the kind of scope 2, scope 3 emissions of a lot of these things that we're looking at. And really kind of help us make more efficient systems in a more global sense, right? Even if you don't have on-site solar, reducing the overall impact of the energy consumed by those sites, I think is exciting. And so, yeah, even if it doesn't make sense to have solar and battery on site, if a kind of larger scale solar and battery system that powers the grid that's then powering the aquaponics system works, then maybe that helps it all make sense together.
Can you go into a little bit more about that? Like our kind of like answering the questions of what mostly powers our grids, or when you say like the grid, just go a little bit more detail for that.
Yeah, so today in the United States, the grid is still mostly fossil fuels. Historically speaking, it was very dominantly coal. About 20 years ago or a couple decades ago, that started really declining, and that's partially a success story. I think a lot of people look at that and start kind of seeing coal closures and all of that and get really excited about, renewables are displacing coal. That's not really the whole story, unfortunately. It's really coincided a lot with dropping natural gas prices and increasing natural gas on our grid due to the shale revolution. So really right now, natural gas is a very significant portion. Typically it's driving prices on our grid, but renewables is, there and growing every year and growing really rapidly. So right now, I believe the US grid, as of last I checked, was about 4% solar, with a slightly larger portion of wind. And like I said, growing really rapidly. So that's just kind of the transition that we're a part of. And then kind of looking at the really exciting challenges, to me exciting, of natural gas right now is in a lot of ways enabling the renewables build out, because it's a really flexible, gas peaker plants can kind of come on and off and really allow renewables to do their peaking and valleying as the sun and the wind are available. So it's a big challenge, and to me an exciting one to see how do we bring in enough batteries, or think about other ways to get creative with our demand flexibility, in order to make that kind of flexibility possible without the gas involved, because natural gas has been a really helpful fuel to get us off coal, but long term, obviously, to go net zero or to full renewable grid, that's not going to be a part of it. Net zero, it could be a part if we get really good at carbon capture and sequestration, but right now the technology is not there, and obviously it still would require the either production of renewable natural gas or fracking or otherwise extracting natural gas. So I like thinking of the target as being 100% renewable. And then we can be flexible from there if we need to, in order to achieve our goals. But I like to really shoot for that kind of more pure 100% renewable goal.
Cool. Paulo, I have a question for you in terms of Moses West, kind of the same question I posed to Dr. Beecher. Do you guys have a system that works on renewable energy or solar?
Yep. Actually, so all of our technologies work on renewable energy. They work on grid power. They also work on diesel backup batteries. it's more so just about what power capacity we can achieve that can be provided in any given point. But we've made it such in a way that the units are modular. And because of this modular capacity, they run with less power than would be required for something that would be like, you know, kind of like this giant brick, but for lack of better words, you know, the units use less energy than pulling groundwater from the earth. So because of that, they're designated as some of the most efficient in the country. So it's worked out for us that if we get just enough sun in the day, we can actually power it full term with solar energy because of the ability to store the energy as well.
Well, I wanted to get into, as we're talking about the challenges that you guys are seeing, what are some of the challenges you feel in your industry is the main kind of hurdle of getting over for that, you know, really your source kind of being one of the more mainstream? Because with
Oh.
each of y'all's, okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, shoot. So I'll give you a brief story. You know, Jackson, Mississippi, the Wolby Curtis water treatment plant failed. And funny enough, 2 weeks prior to that, a gentleman named Mr. Cammy Kitchens called Moses and said, hey, you know, I run this elder care facility, you know, with the disabled veterans and those suffering from any kind of like debilitation or something like that. And he said that he drives about 6 miles a day to bring clean water to his location for his people. And then the treatment plant failed. And in between that time, Moses had already started building a machine to bring down there to Jackson. And so when we brought the unit to Jackson, prior to us even getting there, we reached out to those that would be designated as, I guess, in charge, the mayor's office, things of that nature. And Mr. Kitchens actually got all the way up to the lieutenant governor, who said, no, that's okay. We got it from here. Don't worry. We got this. Don't worry. No problem. Said, okay. Nonetheless, we still continued on with what we were doing. But, you know, the alternatives weren't to be heard about, but instead they were like, oh man, this is so terrible. Nonetheless, we brought the unit down there. And then we said, look, we would like to set this unit up in placement to this facility so they could have clean water for, you know, forever at this point, until you guys figure out whatever it is you guys got to figure out, this unit can stay here. And they said, no, you have to have it tested by a Mississippi engineer tested with our water capabilities. Mind you, these units are being bought 10 apiece by the military every year for the past 10 years. Moses is the sole contract holder to do so. And yet they said he's passed the TCEQ test, the hardest water test in the country, from Texas. They gave him that test out of spite, but he passed it with flying colors. And they said, no, we have to test the water. The Mississippi people said they had to test the water. And so we said, okay, no problem. Let us know when. We'll wait. So we waited. 1 week passed by. Another week passed by. No response. By the 2.5 week, it was costing us $2,000 a day to have that unit sitting on a trailer. And so because of that, we had to bring the unit over to the side of the building. And basically now we're waiting to hook it up. We can't even hook it up to the place because they said that they have to test that water. It's been months now since this happened. We're still waiting for a response. And Mr. Kitchens has gotten to the point where he's almost to the tune of having to sue the city in order to provide clean water to people. And this is in America. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, in Africa, we have cities, nations that are like, hey, let's get this ball rolling. Let's get a couple units. Since the time that we've been at the United Nations to now, they've already placed an order. Why is it so difficult over here to give people clean water? It's amazing, right? But Teslas, you can buy a Tesla and it'll kill you. And they'll say, hey, no, go ahead, buy some more. There's differences, you know? Oh, you're muted, Jordan. You're muted.
I'm saying, like, just reacting to that story, that's tough that you have an innovative machine right there to provide people with.
I can show you guys the video of the machine in Jackson, by the way, if you guys want to take a look.
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah, all right, hang on.
1 second, let me make sure everyone can share. You should be able to share now.
All right, can you guys see the screen?
Yep, I can.
All right. This is outside the facility.
All the way.
It's wow, it's pretty compact. Dang.
Yeah.
And it's just grabbing the water out of the air.
Day.
Wait, can you say again?
I was saying in Jackson, it was doing about 600 gallons a day. And because it's humid down there, it's humid, it's warm, you know, it's optimal conditions. And it cannot, because there's only 4 moving parts and the whole process of cooling is mechanical. And we've been able to add that storage tank capacity to the side. You can really produce water 24/7, 7 days a week.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Any reactions?
So yeah, anyways, I appreciate y'all taking a look at the video.
No, for sure. Thank you for showing us. Any reactions, or also just jumping in on that question of challenges for you and your industry, or for your industry, Lance or Tina?
Yeah, I can speak to solar a little bit. Certainly, you know, getting the regulation right, Apollo, I can echo that. That's certainly something we see on solar as well. I think for me, though, the question was framed, I think, Jordan, as what's a barrier to becoming one of the mainstream sources? And I think one of the really optimistic realities is that solar is a mainstream energy source today. If you look at planned capacity additions on our grid, solar is more than half of them coming up for the planned additions. So that's really exciting. I think that, though, the technological side, the challenge longer term as we get closer to full renewables is going to be not just today we're really good at storing energy an hour, 2 hours, maybe 4 hours, but how do we do that for longer durations, right? We all know that wind and sun are seasonal, right? And so and those are the 2 main renewable sources today by volume, other than hydroelectric, but there's the challenges there with building more dams. So if we look at solar and wind, the seasonality is a big challenge. So how do we get good energy storage that's reasonably priced, that keeps people's electric bills low and reasonable, that's able to get us through, you know, the lower sun winter, if you're in an area with a lot of cold winters and you need electricity during the winter and it's cold and it's dark, right? Things like that, kind of from a technical perspective, making sure that that's possible. But yeah, as Apollo mentioned, I'd also echo the regulatory issues are certainly something that we come up against on renewable energy, and particularly building out energy transmission. If you can produce a bunch of energy in the desert, but there aren't many people there using it, how do we get it to where it can be used? That's certainly another challenge.
Some of the challenges we have here is the fact that it's just new technology. And so we have an issue where, for me personally, at the university, it's hard to get traditional agricultural people to understand what I'm trying to do. They still believe that a plant needs to go in soil. And that's hard to get across to some people. Bigger challenges in the fact that it's just new, like I said, new technology. It's hard for people to get into it. Banks and loaning institutions have an issue with the fact that they don't know what's the technology is about, so they are hesitant to loan money to people to start facilities. But you know, once we get a hold of the fact that we're producing a clean, fresh product, a lot of people are interested in buying the product in stores and stuff like that. It's just the fact that it's hard to get started with units and facilities. So that's probably the biggest challenge we have right now.
Man, so it seems like there's a common kind of thread of just like, how do we get people on board with what's new in a sense? Everyone's kind of used to what they have done, with the traditional ways of things. So how do we get people into a new thing that can actually, be more abundant? I feel like echoing off of what Tina has said, that solar is already rising and making its way into the mainstream. That's great, and I've pretty much like gotten there. How do we use it all together? And that leads into my next of collaboration. So, maybe not everyone, each innovation doesn't have to stand alone by itself, right? It's like I can only speak for myself, but personally, it can kind of feel like you're banging your head against the wall by yourself at times, or just with your team. And we're all in this, and there's lots of us trying to do the same thing of making the world a better place together. So in your personal experiences, where have you seen collaboration, or how would you like to see collaboration continue in the efforts of, building out this better world? For example, if I start with Tina, if solar, in collaboration with solar, what are the renewables that you are the most fan of in moving to a fully renewable source world?
Yeah, in terms of other renewable sources, I'd say I like all of them because it's going to take a big combination, right? If we think about when solar energy is available, it's available about 12 hours a day, let's say. The other 12 hours, we need other solutions, right? So wind is great. Depending on where you locate wind, you can get interesting different profiles that might kind of work well with solar and with other wind profiles. I know there was some really interesting studies done in Texas, for example, about kind of combining solar energy with wind out in West Texas with coastal wind, because the wind has different patterns of when it blows, and then could, if all connected with high quality transmission, could power the state pretty reliably. There's other really interesting technologies out there. Geothermal is pretty interesting, good kind of reliable, steady source. And then there are many other sources out there that are less commercialized and still more early stage that I think hold a lot of promise, but today, unfortunately, kind of aren't there yet in the way that what's really exciting, another really exciting thing about wind and solar is that they're cheaper than pretty much any other energy source today. And so I think that I'm really excited about what can get over that commercialization hump in the next 10 years or so, and how can we build out that collaboration. I also think there's really interesting work going on right now, looking at the microgrid market with, more localized solar energy storage, potentially other generation sources, and then how do they work really well with demand? Because I think there's a lot of interesting work going on, right now, a lot of our demand is just static. You turn on your laundry machine and you just run it when you want to run it, right? But if you had some signals saying, hey, energy is really tightly constrained right now, what if you waited to run your washer until nighttime when we don't need so much energy? Things like that. There's a lot of interesting work going on there to look not just at the generation side, but also how do we look at the other side of that equation that I think is really promising.
Cool. Anybody else want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I can. It's as far as there's new ways to do this and the more efficient ways to do aquaponics and hydroponics. There's not really anything that complements it as far as other renewable sources for food production. But I do say that, with this type of units, that we can locate them in almost anywhere we want to. And so that's probably a good way to say that we're trying to move a food production unit into an area that possibly wouldn't have one at this point. So we can urban agriculture or urban aquaponics and urban hydroponics has been a big, takeoff right now. Just trying to produce food where, if you, for example, if in the inner city, you have basically people eating at gas stations, they'll eat Doritos and soft drinks for their diet, in a sense, and that's all they have. But if we can take this type of food production into that area, they would have a more abundance of fresh food and more healthier food. So that's sort of what we're looking at with this.
Awesome, Paulo.
Sorry about that. I mean, I think that, as a business, my business personally, we focus on integration of kind of like the collaborative method of bringing a lot of these things together and a lot of these peoples together, and one of the things that we really, really want to focus on heavily is how do we ensure that there's a level of education for others that teaches others how to do better and build more in a way, like currently we're going to be working with the National Institute of Building Sciences throughout the US and introducing this project and this curriculum that teaches others how to produce atmospheric water generators through education, but also it teaches them solar, it teaches them water maintenance and water production. It teaches them various different other skill sets that will lead them to higher paying jobs, to give them a higher paying salary, to say, hey, being sustainable is worth the money. It's worth the endeavor. And so I believe in like partnerships, collaborations, because really, one person can't do everything, 2 people can't do everything, but 100 people can definitely accomplish everything.
Yes, I am just taking it all in. You guys are giving me so much like great information, and I'm excited to go into the next phase. So those are my questions. And then I kind of have a little exercise for you guys. Bear with me through it. But while I get that set up, if there's anybody in the chat who would like to ask a question in the chat, definitely do so. And I'll definitely get it to Apollo, Tina, Lance here. Going into the exercise I have for you guys. So for the Green Print, our big vision is to create a tool platform where people can come together and learn about new types of technology and really build sustainable communities in a virtual setting. So we have an early prototype of our game. And now even just off of Lance's information, I'm like, oh, there are some things that we have to tweak as far as data goes. But I wanted to have you guys play the early prototype together, and basically build a small community for like 30 people in our early prototype. Before we do that, I just wanted to open up a conversation of if you had all the resources to kind of create this micro community, starting with the basic building blocks, what would be some of your tactics or what would be some of your ideas just going in from the jump? And you guys can just go ahead, any order, jump in, no worries. I'm just gonna start to set up.
This may not be relevant to the game, but I think one thing as we're thinking about building sustainable communities that comes up for me a lot is getting community input and thinking about these less as kind of copy and paste of something that worked here. We're going to take it and we're going to put it elsewhere, and really thinking about the local environment and what the needs are. I live in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and that's something that is very relevant here as we're thinking about what's the next step of the grid here in Puerto Rico. It's a lot of conversations going on right now, and trying to get a lot of community input, and in some ways I think succeeding, and in some ways there's a lot that could be done better. But I think that's really critical, right? When we think about who knows most about what's right for a local sustainable community. It's the people who have been living there and experiencing the challenges there.
That is such a great and fantastic point, because a lot of times we often see places go up, or in my neighborhood, my community, I see, you know, different types of construction happening. And I'm like, what is even going on here? I'm so out of the loop, you know, unless you attend all the city council meetings and things like that. You have to go through to kind of get these things, you know, you feel like, oh, they're just building something here. And that's one of the big solutions that we would like to bring, you know, just like social media has kind of a good thing social media has brought is connection around information. Well, what if we could be connected around how our community is shaped, right? And this could be anywhere. So people can have more access into what, you know, what are the resources? Where is my food coming from? Where is my water coming from? Where is my energy coming from? And really see it in a way that's super accessible, not so high level. You know, I'm learning so much of this. I like know, you know, you guys are experts in your industry than I am a regular person just wanting to, you know, wanting to learn more and wanting to see how can these things shape our world. But yeah, I think that's an amazing point, because that's what we need. People, I feel like if people had a tool or have the tool to collaborate more and to shape their community, I believe they would use it. You know, they would want it. And we shouldn't just kind of go into places without understanding what the community needs. Does anybody else want to throw in on if you were just kind of given everything? This is like a no bar question, but if you were kind of given no limits to go into a space alongside the community and begin to build a sustainable community. And by that, well, actually, maybe I should back up and say, no, first you guys answer that question. Are there any thoughts on that one?
I guess you could say, as far as that question being relevant to food production, the idea here is the fact that if you gave me unlimited resources, that it would be beneficial to set up a unit. The nice thing about aquaponics is the fact that you produce a protein and vegetables at the same time. So you almost have a full healthy meal in one unit. And so the idea here is the fact that having units in areas where you could have production, either small scale, large scale. We've designed systems for, you know, a family of 4, a neighborhood of 10 houses, or a community. So it's just, the nice thing about it is the fact that it can be scalable, and the fact of having fresh and available food for the community. So
I would love to eat at a cafe that was just like aquaponics. Oh, you know what? And I didn't tell you, Lance, that our dinner we had a dinner as a fundraiser for the organization in February, and they brought in aquaponic prawn and vegetables to be a part of the dinner, since they know we're such a big fan. Did I get you? There you go. All right, so let's bring in, Apollo, did you have any before we bring in the
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm all right.
So the question I was going to ask you guys a little bit, because we also talk about what is a sustainable community, and I did want to ask, you know, what does sustainability, like what does sustainable mean to you? Because sometimes I feel like in conversations with people, it's a little bit different for each person. So for me, it means being able to create what we need to live in a way that can replenish itself, that doesn't have, a super terrible impact on the world. And it's also something that can last for a long time without being harmful to people or the planet. Do you guys have your own specific kind of definitions of sustainable?
Yeah, I think I definitely have a definition of sustainable. I think my definition of sustainable would be the ability to produce more of it. Some people would say that, recycling is a sustainable act, which it is, absolutely. But I feel like, like finding something that can be redone by another is something that's sustainable, something that can be, repeated again and again and again, I feel is the definition of sustainability for me.
I think sustainability in my area is the fact that we have a unit that runs off of, we can reuse the water constantly. So there's no extra need. In fact, if we wanted to collect rainwater, that could probably replenish, because most of the time, the only water we lose in the system is from evaporation. So Apollo, if you put one of your systems in my greenhouse, it's got a lot of humidity going on there.
It would be running so well.
Yeah. So that's sort of my way of putting sustainability in action for what we do here at the university.
I think from my perspective, when I think about what is the ideal of sustainability, I think about the Iroquois concept of the seventh generation principle. The basic idea is that decisions we make today should be sustainable out through the seventh generation. So not just our kids or our grandkids or anyone that we could really conceptualize, but out through the seventh generation. But I also kind of will hedge that and say that doesn't mean that we shouldn't take steps that are going to get us closer to that, but not all the way, right? Because I think we're pretty darn far from being in a system that's there and living by that seventh generation principle. So certainly there's a lot of problems in the solar industry that are being solved and need to be solved in order to get there. And I think those kind of smaller steps are really important. So like module recycling, solar panel recycling is something that a lot of people are talking and looking at. And I think that's kind of taking us in the right direction to get us to a truly sustainable state.
Super cool. Awesome. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the game and kind of just start building. I'll be doing the building, but you guys definitely like chime in on, just things of where would you want the houses and certain things like that. And we can kind of just start to chat. This is also a good source of research on my end, being able to talk to you guys about this. This is very, how I say it, very early prototype of just, getting blocks on the site and pulling our data together. Can you guys see? I've let it run a little bit.
Yep.
Don't pay attention to that. So here we have a map of a space that's in Georgetown, South Carolina. And here we can start to build with what we have. And so each block is actually like 600 square feet, and we can place it, where we want, and it represents a home. For this one, this represents a home. Purple represents a home. So like when I put one down, it's like one person. So if we were gonna do for like, let's just kind of start with like 10 people. We kind of just start getting our homes down there. Once I kind of start getting them down, you can see that as far as like the stats, this is red. So that means we're not necessarily sustainable because it's not producing any of the resources that the would need. And that includes food and water and energy. Do you guys do you have any input on where I'm putting the blocks, the homes and things like that?
Yeah, wait, can you put the homes in like the center?
Sure, move them. So we kind of have like more of like a cul-de-sac near the center.
Yeah, yeah, like a central location kind of thing,
Yeah.
Because I feel like if you're gonna put like resources, you could put them on external points. So that way, I mean, if they were all in the middle, like, God forbid something happens. You lose everything in one shot.
Love it. As I'm doing this. So we have like 6 people right now. These are like 6 homes. I need some food, water. Go ahead and. Well, you, Apollo, where would be best for the water source?
As close as possible. As close as possible to the homes.
To the homes, okay.
Yeah, like, would it be one per each home? Or would it be like one for like a couple of homes?
This would be like one for like a couple of homes.
All right, so you could put one in this, like the like right there is perfect.
Okay, right here. Okay. And Lance, this is where you come in. Where should we put the food? Which is actually built off of the aquaponic conversation that we actually had.
It really doesn't, it has no significance where it is. I mean, as long as it's close to the homes that you could produce. Yeah,
So
about right there. Well,
you're like here. I'll put it here.
Should
Okay.
put it by the water, right?
Yeah, we could do that.
yeah, probably so.
Yeah. Get a 2-pack special,
And then as far as like energy, we can actually just kind of stack it on top of the homes as the kind of solar panels on the buildings.
Rooftop solar, I like it.
And so of course now like the law from this conversation is that solar wouldn't be able to fully power this aquaponic farm. What else? And that it would take, either being on the grid or another type of backup source, right? Right, Lance?
Yeah.
One way it's kind of broken for now that I have to get into, and that's not too terrible of a fix as we add in more blocks and we add in more things. One of the things that could be like imagined is that the aquaponic farm would also, of course, like feed like a cafe or like a market where we have like more food kind of going on here. But at least from the building blocks of, what we already know that we need, which is food, water, energy, home to live in, we would have everything that we would need in this kind of space for people. We want this like to grow. We want to grow our game into being not just for something that you could build on your own, but like you can actually go in with a group of people and get collaboration and feedback so that it will be like much more expanded. But that's kind of just the the beginning of what we have going on here. Using our kind of just like imagination, what are some things that you could see a community benefiting off of? If there was a group of people in the community that were more so, either, housing insecure and or, on the brink, and came into kind of a place like this where things are really taken care of in terms of there's, an abundance of food, abundance of water. What are the things that you feel like would be a benefit of having a place that's built on having an abundance of resources?
Jordan, can you repeat the question just one more time?
Oh, I was just saying, okay, so what do you feel could be like the benefits of being able to build a community that would be built, these different innovative technologies?
I mean, look, not wasting resources is first of all, that's probably the biggest thing, being able to plan and have some foresight, to say, hey, this is where this is going to go, and you don't have to go like testing the waters, personally, directly, like, hey, let me go out there with the whole team, 15, 20 deep, and go do some testing. Like, think about it, right? Some of the work that we do with the University of Lahore, right, require people to physically go out there and look at these things, like eye them down themselves, right? But hopefully, eventually, one day, technology will change where that process of having to, physically send people out there, 10, 15, 20 people out there, can now just be one person saying, hey, here's this blueprint that we were given based on the pre-planning that was done before, and it saves time. It saves time and resources as a whole.
Yeah, that's definitely the goal for this, for the tool to eventually become like a pre-production for people to build, their own sustainable communities that are built off of, innovative technologies like the ones that you guys are involved with. Any other jump-ins on that?
I think, like Apollo said, I think it's fundamental to look at the resources and use them wisely, and use what you really need for this type of environment. There's only certain things we really need to live with, and if we sort of streamline things and make it to where we're utilizing the water resources, the energy resources, and the food resources wisely, that I don't think you would have any problems developing these new communities.
Yeah, and I think just when we think about the kind of benefits of these communities, the other thing that comes to mind for me is the resilience of local production, right? I don't think that we're ever going to be able to get to a point where there's no centralized supply chain for energy or food, and I don't know that would necessarily be the goal, but having that accessibility locally if the grid goes down or if supply chains are struggling, just adds so much resiliency to communities that I think is a really positive way to think about how we build capability to deal with, increasing disastrous weather events and things like that.
No, for sure. I think that's like a big point, that to bring back these, locally produced and sustainable processes that I think each and every one of y'all's Innovation Link does a really good job of. Let's see, we have some questions coming in from the chat. Could these systems be promoted by installing them and sponsoring businesses, such as a food production system in an urban shop? So,
I'll take that. Yeah, we see a lot of major food production facilities, even grocery stores and stuff like that, doing rooftop production. So yeah, I definitely see an ability, and that's bringing it to urban environments, rural environments, all of them. But we are seeing an acceptance of the fact that we are seeing food establishments trying to get food as fresh as possible by growing it themselves.
That's very true.
Did anybody else want to jump in on that? Cool. I think Lance, yeah, that's seeing a sushi restaurant off of a aquaponic farm. Maybe interesting.
They're growing the fish in the back, you know, we got it fresh.
Super fresh. No, for real. No, great. Are there any other questions from the chat? Any questions you guys have, even just like for each other?
Oh, what would be like, let's say if we were to have 6 aquaponic facilities on a home per se, like for like, you know, for a you know, let's say like a mid-size home, you know, like a like a 3-bedroom home or something like that. We were to put aquaponic systems like in those homes in a modular fashion, would there be like a certain power consumption to that size, or would you have an idea on that by chance?
Yeah, as far as small systems like that, we're talking probably less power than it would to run a swimming pool. So it's you know, it's not a lot for small systems because we're using small, very efficient water pumps. We do need aeration systems, but so, you know, a small system that a homeowner could run with would be, it wouldn't be much as far as power consumption.
Okay, okay. Do you think it's something that would like solar power would be efficient for it?
Yeah, it could. But like I said before, we need the power at night too. So we've designed a system that if I could have the sunshine 24 hours a day, it would run on solar perfectly fine. It's got a 45-watt water pump and we do self-aeration. So in fact, we've tried to figure out a way to put solar power on it and then also have a battery backup for nighttime. But it's doable. It's just the fact that we have the nighttime to worry about.
I got you. Understood.
I have another question in the chat for aquaponics. How much variety can you grow at any time for, let's say, a 10-person community?
The variety is limitless. There's so many things that you can grow. And the nice thing about aquaponics is the fact that you can grow a lot of different things all at the same time. We have that limitation with hydroponics because we're adding the nutrients in, and with aquaponics we have the nutrients coming from the fish. So as long as we're feeding the fish, the nutrients are there and they're there at high quantities that we could grow, say, for example, lettuce along the side of tomatoes. The systems we have here, we grow leafy vegetables, greens. You know, it's a nice system that you have variety as a whole. And then even with the protein source, you can also do some variety there too.
What kind of what types of fish or even doesn't even have to be fish, right? It could be like shrimp and
you could do prawns. Most of the fish that are grown are tilapia in the system, but you could do catfish. You could do hybrid striped bass. It just depends on, you know, when I'm having someone come in and want to do a system, I'm not going to recommend them try hybrid striped bass right off the beginning because of the fact that they're a little bit more technical things you got to worry about when you take care of them. But you know, there's a variety of fish. I mean, we're kind of limited on what we could do, but there's a variety of fish that you could get a taste for in any area that you would be producing in.
For Tina, in Puerto Rico, locally, what are some of the biggest challenges that your direct community is facing regards to sustainability, and how is the solar industry impacting?
Yeah, so sustainability is a really broad question in Puerto Rico. So I think more broadly speaking, there's a lot of issues that we could look at, like actually food. There's not a whole lot of local food production at this point in Puerto Rico. So that it's mostly shipped in, and then when those shipping lines are disrupted, that can cause big issues for people locally here. From an energy standpoint, there are a lot of challenges. Obviously, one of those is getting hit by hurricanes really regularly, right? So there's environmental challenges, but I think there's also just challenges in terms of getting the infrastructure built, having the political and regulatory kind of stars align. And right now there's a big conversation regarding the kind of trade-off between the sustainability of just the volume of building utility scale energy storage and solar and other assets. So that's, you know, very large assets that are feeding into the grid, feeding a lot of people from kind of far away, versus more kind of microgrid and community-based energy. A lot of people with good reason, based on the state of our grid, are really pushing for community-based energy. And that's, I think, really reasonable. I definitely support that. The challenge there is just the scale, right? If we're right now, the Puerto Rico grid's about 4% solar, and going from 4% to 100%, there's a lot of energy build out that needs to happen. So I think it's probably going to be a mix, but that kind of conversation, the build out of storage, and just frankly, you know, getting the right land and everything, there's a lot of challenges. So I don't know if that answered the question, but my answer is many, and we have some really awesome people working on it, certainly locally, and I think people continue to get excited about the challenge and do really good work.
Paulo, can you discuss how your work with water scarcity intersects with food deserts? And
Yeah.
also, does Moses West work with Puerto Rico?
Yeah, so in relation to water scarcity and food deserts, it's we're currently working on a project in Chicago to create urban agricultural zones, is what we're calling them. And it's about I guess I'd say like about an acre in size, but we're using a 10,000 square foot greenhouse in order to do it. And we're going to build these the UAZs, I guess we'll call them for short, these UAZs across urban areas. And so, you know, one of the things that we had spoken to the mayor of New York about was building one of these in an area of Brooklyn that's kind of an underserved community. And we feel that if we build enough of these in enough underserved communities, that the food deserts that exist that are primarily in underserved communities might be alleviated just a little bit more. So that way people don't have to drive 25 miles to get good groceries for themselves. Instead, produce is now down the street. And through these agricultural zones, we're going to hopefully promote workforce development through education. And so not only are we going to change the fact that these are underserved areas, but now no longer will they be underserved because they'll now have the resources to do so. And for Moses's work in Puerto Rico, we haven't recently done work in Puerto Rico, but in 2016, when I believe it was Hurricane Maria, that got
2017 was Hurricane Maria. Yeah.
2017, yeah. So Hurricane Maria, Moses was down there with the unit on the island of Vieques, and he provided 50,000 people water for about, I believe it was like 5 months, with one of his larger units, the AWG 5000. And I believe he got an Emmy for it. I'm pretty sure. I think so, but that they named the day after him in Austin, Texas. So February 6th in Austin, Texas is Moses West Day, and it's been so since 2018.
Yeah.
And actually, I had a question actually for Lance, and this one's from the University of Lahore. And so, if you had 5 acres, would you be able to feed 1 million people per day in building a facility on that? And what would be the cost factors related to it? This is in Pakistan, by the way.
That's a question not for a Sunday, well, evening for me right now. You 5 acre greenhouse, probably not 1 million people. You would have, usually we kind of say that, you know, a 1/4 acre greenhouse of doing aquaponics can usually produce as much food as an acre of land. So it's about 1/4 of the space that we need. So I'd have to do some calculations, but not too sure that we could feed that many people with that size.
Well, if you could, you know, while you do think about it, think about what size would be necessary. Like, so the outcome of the required outcome is to feed 1 million people. And so whatever size capacity that might be required for that, definitely that would be something that could be talked about. Because
Yeah.
you know, whatever works really, however it does work to get to that goal is the goal I'm looking for, basically.
Yeah, I mean, we could design a system to feed that many people. It would be a relatively large system. We have a system in, I think it's Wisconsin or Michigan, that is doing salmon and lettuce. And they're probably the biggest facility in the U.S. and Superior Fresh is their name. And so, but I'm not sure how much production they're doing, but we could definitely design a system to do it. It would be rather large.
No, that's perfect. I mean, fortunately enough, I actually have Dr. Khan from the University of Lahore in the chat here. He'd actually asked me to ask you these questions because, you know,
Okay.
one of the things that we're looking to do is bring innovative technologies to the country of Pakistan through the university and through academic relationships as a whole. And so they have a partnership with the University of Michigan as of right now. And so that's why we were like, well, you know, feeding people is one of their biggest priorities over there right now because of these earthquakes that are happening. And so a sustainable resource for them would be perfect, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and like I said, it could be designed and we get a lot of, or I see a lot of interest in that area. We see a lot in the Saudi Arabia areas, Dubai areas, that they're building these massive food facilities, basically in the desert. And their resources are unlimited, of course. But it could be done. It's just you'd have to put some engineering behind it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. That was great. All right, so getting into some more questions off of the chat. Can business do anything to help overcome the regulatory obstacles you guys were mentioning earlier?
So in the solar area, I'll say just kind of businesses can be part of the lobbying effort to help us kind of get reasonable regulations. It's certainly something that I know is being discussed a lot by regulatory agencies, including FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. They're looking at a variety of things, including how can we build out transmission more quickly and how can we get approval for energy systems to interconnect into the grid more quickly to slow down those delays. So I think just being part of supporting efforts that are going to make it easier, within reason, obviously, but easier to connect into the grid and do so efficiently. That's what I would say. But unfortunately, it's going to take the regulatory process, it's time to kind of make those changes.
Anybody else want to go into that before we go to the next one? And then I think we're going to be starting to wrap up. Businesses helping with obstacles. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, so how long would it take to build and install aquaponics solar water systems for a small house cluster or a living complex? So basically, if I'm hearing it right, kind of taking y'all's innovations and doing a small cluster similar to what we were visually representing on the game. So how long would it take?
I don't, as far as time wise, it would just be, in my opinion, just however long it would take to build the community.
So how long does it usually take for building, once you already have it prep aside, once you already have it planned out, how long does it usually take to build an aquaponics system that could, let's say like 2025?
It could be built as fast as if you have a crew on standby. I mean, you build the system. Now it does take some time to get the system going. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks for it to mature. But other than that, it's just the fact of we built a system. 2 people built a small system that could probably be used on a house that it took us a day and a half. So, but we're still fighting the whole 6 to 8 weeks of maturation just because of temperature issues. So
are you saying in 6 to 8 weeks it's producing food?
yeah.
That's pretty, I mean, I feel like that's kind of fast. No?
Yeah.
For
Well, with
agriculture or-
hydroponics, I mean, you can build a system and start producing food at day one. So that's a little bit different. And the reason we have to mature the system is because we need bacteria in the system to grow, to convert the waste from the fish into nutrients for the plants. So that's the trade-off there.
Pretty cool. Apollo, for the water, I mean, if do you guys just deliver? You guys have already made a bunch of units, huh? It's like, when do you want it? Or how does it work?
We take an assessment of how much water is going to be needed for that area. And then what we do is we build so we can build customizable units the size of the Superdome and down to the size of the 4x4 box that you guys saw in that video. And so really what we do is we assess how much water is needed and we produce a little bit more than that, you know, just to make sure that there's always enough resources. And then we produce the tanks as well. And depending on how the cluster of the homes is situated, what we would do is to reduce the logistics of moving water. What we would do is make these point specific in a way where people would be able to just tap into the resources of the tank as a whole. And then that way we would also introduce, further steps of other like partners and things like that for water management, like wastewater management, like reclamation, things like that, recycling, just things to make sure that that water ends up going to like agriculture or something like that useful in the area. So I guess I would say maybe like it could take anywhere from like 2 to 3 weeks to get the unit to you. That's a smaller unit, to about 6 months if we're building a custom unit that's for like a larger facility or something of that sort.
Okay. And Tina,
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know the answer to this one. I work mostly on utility scale solar projects, and there we're looking multiple square miles a year plus from groundbreaking to getting it kind of up and running on the grid. So obviously it's a much more efficient process for something that's rooftop or a small ground mount solar facility, but I don't have any details in terms of exactly how long we'd be looking. So.
Well, man, thank you guys. This has been a great conversation, and I love like the even connections you guys have already been making amongst each other. I already know Apollo is always going to be connecting people and doing that, so I appreciate that. Love it. Before you guys do go, I have one takeaway question of just like, what are your hopes and ideals for the future when it comes to your energy industry, but also just at the world as a whole, as we can go into a future of what would be your, best vision of the future? What would you like to see?
I mean, I guess I'll go. I guess I'll go real quick, I mean, what I'd like to see, my vision of the future is, things not taking 40, 50s. Like, they said at that UN water conference that last time it happened was 50 years ago. And in between that last time that it happened and now, it's gone to shit. It's gone to absolute mayhem, And so clearly it means that in those 50 years, something wasn't done right. And nobody said, hey, let's do something about that now. Let's do something about that tomorrow or immediately, And so hopefully that, like, I've noticed that a lot of times conversations will happen, but things will never actually move forward. And so with the hopes of that, that things always move forward at that positivity, with that follow through, I guess I would say.
I would just be happy with just that we have a very consistent, fresh, safe food supply, and just look at new technologies. We got to feed the people of the world, and there's limited space. We're running out of space. We're running out of water. So the idea here is the fact that we look at more conservative ways to grow food and more efficient ways to grow food, but not to skimp on the fact that it's healthy and it's wholesome and it's fresh.
Yeah, from my perspective, I'm hoping for a fully renewable grid. And I'm hoping for that build out to be done in a way that offers job opportunities and transition opportunities for underserved communities, for people who have historically relied on fossil fuel production, and just generally does so in an equitable way. And hoping also for a way that offers good recycling opportunities and more circular economy opportunities, so that we can really have fully renewable grid in a way that's long-term sustainable, to power both our current electricity needs and future additional electricity needs, right? We're electrifying cars currently and looking at other industries to electrify with the goal of making them more sustainable, and they're at their most sustainable if we can get the grid to a renewable and circular economy place.
For sure. I'm about to give you guys a double, when you say bye to someone and then you have to say bye to them again, because going off of what Apollo was saying about the action, I have to ask you guys before you go, for anyone who's watching this, for me, myself, what actions can everyday people like me, take in terms of each of y'all's industries, and just even letting people know more about it, that an innovation exists in terms of Lance and Apollo. You guys have anything that we can do to support what you guys are doing?
Yeah, you can come to my university and tell the upper administration that there's ways to grow food besides putting it in the ground.
I can do that, Lance. So I will go to Clemson.
I guess I would say, like, advocate for better water sources, like we ran a campaign a while back that was a "What's in Your Water" campaign. And really, we were literally mailing out people test kits. Test your water. Just go ahead, test it. Why not? And people were coming back shocked with what they thought was, New York City, for example, says they have the best water in the country. That now they have lead problems in their water, So these are the things that people are like, people are like, oh, you can drink from the faucet. I think not, definitely start testing it, seeing where your water comes from, but also like some of the bottled water that you buy, look at where it's made, look at the origination of where it's coming from. Because places like Chad, Africa, people are dying over those rivers and those lakes because people are literally pushing them off of their own reservation of water. So like, places like Fiji, for example, where Fiji water comes from, and Dasani and Nestle and all of these other companies. Just, when you're making these purchases, consider these things, consider what you're supporting. That's all.
Yeah, I think the action you can take to support solar is making sure you're educated and learning about what's out there. A lot of people don't know that solar and wind are cheaper than most most fossil sources in most cases. There's a lot of misinformation out there about the environmental impacts of renewables. That being said, there certainly are conversations to be had and nuance about problems in the industry, and I think we should be having them. The other thing I'll just say is I think a lot of people think that to be in the renewable energy industry, you have to have engineering background or some specific renewable background. If you're interested in the industry, we need accountants, we need HR people, we need people in every area. And it's growing really, really quickly, and will continue to grow, especially with the Inflation Reduction Act, which was recently signed into law, really supporting the industry. So we need good people in the industry as well if you're interested.
Thank you guys all for being here. I really appreciate it. Please sit tight. I am going to end real fast, but we'll kind of stick around. Bye to anybody who has been watching with us. Appreciate you guys sticking around.